1962. A British woman opens her morning newspaper. Page 5 shows an advertisement for a vacuum cleaner. The headline reads, "Christmas morning she'll be happier with a Hoover." The image shows a woman on her knees, smiling up at her husband, who's handing her the vacuum like it's a diamond ring. This wasn't satire. This wasn't a joke. This was a real ad published in major British newspapers, approved by advertisers, and considered perfectly normal. For decades, British advertising told women their purpose was to clean, to cook, to please their husbands, and to look beautiful while doing it. This is the story of 10 sexist British ads from the 1960s that would be illegal today, and the psychology behind why they worked. Let's start with the housework ads. In the 1950s and 60s, British appliance companies had a problem. Vacuum cleaners, washing machines, and dishwashers were expensive. They needed to convince husbands, because husbands controlled the money, that these products were worth buying. So they marketed them as gifts for wives. One ad for a Kenwood chef mixer showed a woman in pearls and heels standing in a spotless kitchen. The tagline, "The chef does everything but cook, that's what wives are for." Another ad for a Hoover featured a woman literally kneeling before her husband, presenting him with a clean floor. The subtext was always the same: a good wife cleans. A great wife uses our product. And if your wife isn't using our product, maybe she's not trying hard enough. Then there were the beauty ads. British cosmetics companies in the 60s didn't sell makeup. They sold fear. Fear of aging. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing your husband. One ad for Max Factor Foundation featured a worried-looking woman staring at the camera. The headline, "Is your husband losing interest? Maybe it's your complexion." Another ad for Slim C diet pills showed an overweight woman sitting alone, while thin women danced with men in the background. The caption, "Nobody loves a fat girl." These ads didn't just promote products. They promoted shame. One study from 1968 found that 73% of British women felt inadequate after viewing beauty ads. The industry called it aspiration marketing. Psychologists called it emotional manipulation. Let's talk about the cigarette and alcohol ads aimed at women. By the 1960s, British tobacco companies had maxed out the male market. So they turned to women, but not with empowerment, with submission. One ad for Player cigarettes showed a woman lighting her husband's cigarette while he read the newspaper. The tagline, "A good wife knows her husband's favorite brand." Another ad for Guinness featured a woman serving her husband a pint while he sat in his armchair. The caption, "Guinness for strength. His strength, your devotion." These ads didn't sell products. They sold gender roles. Serve your man, know his preferences, your value is in your service. By 1970, British women's smoking rates had doubled. The industry celebrated. Now the car ads. This is where sexism got dangerous. In the 1960s, British car manufacturers assumed women couldn't drive properly. One ad for the Volkswagen Beetle showed a woman looking confused next to a car. The headline, "It's so simple, even she can drive it." Another ad for Ford Cortina featured a woman applying lipstick in the rearview mirror. The tagline, "Ford Cortina, built for the little woman who thinks parking is hard." These ads didn't just mock women, they actively discouraged them from driving. One 1965 survey found that 41% of British husbands didn't want their wives to drive without them. The ads reinforced that. Women are bad drivers. Women are distracted. Women need simple cars for simple minds. It wasn't until the 1970s that British women's driving rates matched men's. And even then, insurance companies charged them more because women are emotional drivers. Then came the fashion and diet ads. British clothing companies in the 60s didn't advertise clothes. They advertised thinness. One ad for a girdle showed a woman's body squeezed into restrictive shapewear. The headline, "He'll never know you're not naturally slim." Another ad for a diet powder featured a woman crying on a scale. The caption, "Nobody wants a fat wife." These products were painful. Girdles restricted breathing. Diet powders caused malnutrition. But the ads made women feel they had no choice. One British doctor in 1967 wrote that he treated dozens of women per week for fainting spells caused by restrictive undergarments. The fashion industry's response? They made the girdles tighter. Because the problem wasn't the product. The problem was women's bodies. Here's the most disturbing part. The domestic violence ads. Yes, you heard that right. In the 1950s and 60s, some British ads implied that domestic violence was acceptable, even funny. One ad for Chase and Sanborn coffee showed a man spanking his wife over his knee. The headline, "If your husband ever finds out you're not store testing for fresher coffee, woe be unto you." Another ad for Van Huysen shirts showed a woman kneeling, serving her husband breakfast in bed. The tagline, "Show her it's a man's world." These ads normalized violence. They made abuse seem like a natural consequence of female failure. One 1964 study found that 38% of British women had experienced physical violence from a partner. The ads told them it was their fault. Let's talk about the employment ads. In the 1960s, British job listings were legally allowed to specify gender. Secretary, women only. Accountant, men only. But the ads went further. One ad for a typing job showed a woman in a short skirt bending over a desk. The headline, "Be a good girl, type fast, and look great doing it." Another ad for an office position featured a woman pouring tea for male executives. The caption, "Join our team. Someone has to make the coffee." These ads didn't just segregate jobs. They defined women's roles as decorative and subservient. It wasn't until the 1975 Sex Discrimination Act that this became illegal in Britain. But the damage was done. An entire generation of British women grew up believing their career options were secretary, nurse, or housewife. Now the most insidious category, the ads that pretended to empower women but didn't. In the late 60s, as feminism gained traction, British advertisers adapted. They started running ads that looked progressive but weren't. One ad for Virginia Slim cigarettes showed a woman in a business suit, smoking confidently. The tagline, "You've come a long way, baby." It looked empowering. But the subtext was, "Real liberation means buying our product." Another ad for a washing powder featured a woman saying, "I don't need a man to do my laundry." The image showed her doing laundry alone, exhausted. The message, independence means doing everything yourself. These ads co-opted feminist language to sell the same old products. They didn't liberate women. They sold them a new cage, one painted in the colors of freedom. Here's what these ads really reveal. For decades, British advertising didn't reflect society. It shaped it. These ads told women they were less intelligent, less capable, less valuable than men. They told women their worth was tied to their appearance, their cooking, their ability to please, and they did it with the authority of major brands, celebrity endorsements, and government approval. Today, if a company ran even one of these ads, they'd face boycotts, legal action, and permanent brand damage. But back then, these were primetime TV commercials. These were full-page newspaper spreads. These were billboards in central London. This is what Britain looked like 60 years ago. This is what we thought was normal. And the worst part? Some of the attitudes in these ads. The idea that women should look a certain way, act a certain way, prioritize their appearance over their ambitions. Those attitudes didn't vanish. They evolved. They're still here, just wearing different clothes.